Hi everybody, welcome back. And if you are preparing for the SHRM-CP or SHRM-SCP, this video is for you. So today I'm going to walk you through 15 powerful strategies that will completely change how you approach the SHRM exam questions. And so I'm not just going to give you tips, but I will also give you typical examples that you will expect to find in the exam so that you can actually see how SHRM expects you to think. So without much further ado, let's get right into it. So tip number 1, your main focus should always be SHRM's ideal best practices. So SHRM is not typically testing you what your company does. It's testing you on what should be done in a perfect HR environment. For example, if an employee comes to you and complains about unfair overtime assignments, you don't just jump into changing schedules or escalating immediately. SHRM would typically expect you to first meet with both the employee and the supervisor to gather the facts and to also understand the situation. So, your main focus should always be to think, what is the most strategic and professional HR response? Tip number 2. Because SHRM is so focused on gathering information, when a question asks you what you should do first, you need to stop and think. SHRM usually wants you to gather information. So let's look at an example where an employee comes and says they're being treated unfairly. Your first point of call is not to assume bias, and you don't defend the manager. Instead, you view the records, you speak to both parties involved, and you understand what really is going on. SHRM is very big on data-driven decisions. Tip number 3. You need to prioritize direct communication. SHRM values human interaction. So, for example, if an employee raises a concern, the better answer is always to meet with them directly rather than sending them an email or pointing them to the policy. Face-to-face communication shows emotional intelligence and leadership that SHRM typically values. Tip number 4. You typically want to break down the question first. So before you even look at the answers, you need to typically understand the situation. Ask yourself, what is the real issue here? From there, you can move on to eliminating weak answers. Anything that is purely administrative, pushes responsibility to somebody else, or ignores communication and stakeholders should be avoided. From there, you can then choose the answer that is strategic, proactive, as well as inclusive. Tip number 5. You want to avoid emotional reactions. So some SHRM questions are designed to feel urgent or emotional. For example, if a high-performing employee threatens to resign, your instincts might lead you to want to offer a counter-offer immediately. But that's not the best answer in that situation. So SHRM would expect you to investigate the situation first and then also think about long-term retention strategies. So you typically want to stay calm as well as think strategically. Tip number 6. So SHRM always prefers long-term solutions over quick fixes. So your main aim is always to think long-term and not quick fixes. So if employee engagement is low, you don't pick something like organizing a team lunch, which is quite temporary. The best answer in this scenario would be implementing a mentorship program or career development initiatives. So aim to always think sustainability. Tip number 7, you always want to answer based on your role. So you always want to pay attention to the role that you have been assigned in the question. So for example, let's look at an instance where you are an HR coordinator and there's a legal issue. Your next best step wouldn't be to try to solve this issue by yourself. You need to escalate it. However, if you are a senior HR business partner, SHRM expects you to analyze the situation and then advise leadership. So your level will determine your response in the question. Tip number 8. You need to ignore your workplace habits. This is a part where a lot of people usually get it wrong. So even if your company wouldn't do something, you still need to choose SHRM best practices as your answer. let's look at an example where there is a lack of diversity. SHRM might expect a company-wide diversity initiative. So even if your organization wouldn't approve it due to the cost, you aim to stick to best practices. Tip number 9, you want to always show cultural and global awareness. So if the question involves global teams or diversity, think culturally. For example, if a policy is being rolled out across multiple countries, you should consider the local labor laws and also translate the policy for non-English speakers. So SHRM expects inclusive and global aware thinking all the time. Tip number 10, let data always drive your decisions. So SHRM is very focused on evidence-based HR. If turnover is high, you don't guess the reason. The best answer would be to gather your data, like exit interviews, before recommending solutions. So you always want to go with the answer that collects or uses Number data. 11, you always want to look for the root causes. Your aim is never to treat the symptoms, but it's always to solve the real problems with the long-term effects in mind. Let's look at an example where departments are constantly clashing. A single meeting is not going to typically fix things. A better solution would be to involve ongoing conflict resolution strategies or cross-function collaboration programs. So your aim is always to think deeper and think long-term. And tip number 12 is you always need to involve the right people. So HR is typically collaborative. So let's look at an example where a manager wants to terminate an underperforming employee. The best answer isn't to approve it immediately. Instead, you recommend coaching, development programs, as well as proper documentation first. And you also want to involve stakeholders. Tip number 13. We're almost at the end, so stay with me. So you want to watch out for keywords. So you want to pay close attention to keywords like first, best, or most appropriate. So if the question asks you what to do first, the correct answer is usually to gather information, not just jumping into action. These words will typically guide your thinking. Number 14, eliminate the weak answers. So you want to employ the process of elimination. So you're going to remove answers that are vague, emotional, non-compliant, or skip proper HR practices. So if an option suggests retaliation or skipping documentation, eliminate that answer immediately. This makes it a lot much easier for you to recognize the correct answers. And so finally, number 15, but certainly not least, you want to practice the SHRM way. So the more SHRM-style questions you do, the more natural the thinking becomes. So you want to focus on understanding why an answer is correct. So you want to use resources like SHRM LMS if you have access to it, or you can also have a platform like Prepsaret, which offers situational questions that closely match the exam and also help you to build the mindset. So if there's anything that I want you to remember from this video is that SHRM answers are always strategic, they're people-focused, they're data-driven, and they are long-term. So if this video helped you, please make sure to like, save, and share it with somebody who may be preparing for SHRM. And as you practice, always ask yourself, what would SHRM do?